It was during the Battle of the Bulge, World War II, that John Pemberton became a prisoner of war, made a promise to God at that point, like many people do in that situation. He told God, if you get me home, I will serve you the rest of my life. And as it turns out, he made it home. And John honored that promise. He moved his family to Grayson, Kentucky, enrolled in Kentucky Christian College, at the time it was called that, and became a student in ministry preparing for preaching. There was while he was there, another World War II veteran that he met named Dennis Pruitt, and Dennis made a similar promise to God, and these two met in college and studying to be ministers, and became really good friends and began developing a plan of what they might do in the future. At one point, they took a bus trip to Canada, Toronto, and they attended the World Missions Fair. While they were there, they met the Prime Minister of Southern Rhodesia, who had come there in order to recruit someone to come to Africa to set up a mission. And they talked and conspired, and they accepted the challenge. It sounded excited to them. So John Pemberton and Dennis Pruitt agreed to take that challenge. They began the process of preparing for the work in Africa. Now, a little context of Southern Rhodesia. What are we talking about, right? It's now called Zimbabwe. So from here on, I'll call it Zimbabwe because that's what we know it. It's down in the southern part of the African continent. South Africa's below it. If you zoom in to Zimbabwe itself, most of the mission is in the Hippo Valley area, named because, well, they have a lot of hippos. And so it just makes sense, Hippo Valley. So that's where most of the ministry takes place. When our teams go there, that's where we're headed. It's that region. Chiredzi is the name of the town that became kind of the headquarters of the mission. And that's where we stay when we go there. I found an old, first of all, before I go there, they moved there in 1956. John and Marge Pemberton did. Dennis Pruitt stayed behind a couple years. He had to finish up a medical degree. Then he moved out there later, 2 years later, with his wife, Lucy. And the mission began with these two families going into what I'll call Zimbabwe, trying to decide how do we reach this country for Christ. They came up with a philosophy to reach the whole person, that they would reach the mind, the body, and the soul. They ministered to the body by Dr. Pruitt, opening up a health clinic in a remote area called Mashoko, and that became a clinic that reached the people in that rural area. They built a school in that same area, and then began holding church services in that area as well. So the medical clinics were helping to heal the body, the schools were enriching the mind, and the churches were there to heal the soul. It's kind of fun. I found an old 1970 newsletter from the mission before they were called Hippo Valley Christian Mission, and they reported back to the States what they were doing in those three areas: education, evangelism, medical work. Always has been those three prongs to reach the continent of Africa, and specifically to reach Zimbabwe. Well, here we are about 70 years or so later. The newsletters have got a little more zip to them, has some color. It's got a little more flashy. That little health clinic in Mashoko is now a full-blown hospital serving the whole region. They have 2 additional health clinics they built since then. That one little school they started with is now 28 different mission schools spread throughout the region. That we've been to many of those, with more than 20,000 children attending these schools every day. Incredible the outreach that has happened in just the past 70 years there in Zimbabwe. More than 500,000 children have gone through these mission schools through the years, where they've not only enriched their minds through education, but they have also learned the gospel message of Jesus Christ. And thousands, literally thousands of these children have gone on to accept Jesus Christ, to become followers of Him, and to be baptized into Him, and are living rich Christian lives because of the impact of this ministry. I've met a few of them myself. Some of you, because we go there often, have met them as well. I have a friend named Cephas. He was introduced to Christ as a child through a revival, one of the revivals the mission was doing. Now, his mom was a witch doctor. right? So people would come to Mom and to their home to get spells, all the things which doctors do. And there were many times that he heard her speak in languages and dialects that she had never learned, that were not her voice for sure. There was obviously demonic activity going on in that home. As a boy in that setting, he attended one of these revivals that the mission was doing. And part of it was, as when we go there as well, they're just like, what are these white people like? They look different than me. And he came out of curiosity. What could they possibly say? And he learned about a God who loved them so much that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross, to be buried and raised from the dead 3 days later. And that was so revolutionary to him. He becomes a believer in Jesus. He was baptized as well into Christ. Many of his family members followed suit through the years, and eventually even his mother, who was once a witch doctor, was baptized into Christ as well. Pretty cool story. He grew up, attended Bible college. We met him as he was already a preacher, already on staff at Hippo Valley Christian Mission. He was often driving us around, touring places, going to different schools, going to different churches, and seeing things. And most recently, he now is a professor at the New Bible College, Central African Christian College. And it was so cool last November, December, to be able to sit in his office and pray with him and just thank God for how he has blessed his life. So cool to see people's lives be changed. These schools have been a harvest field for the souls of Zimbabwe. We teach them the Bible. We teach them who Jesus is. In many of the schools, we offer the Living Proof extracurricular club that kids can be a part of. That's through sponsorship that we do here because we help provide the uniforms. This is the really, really poor children who can't afford this stuff, and they get their uniforms and their shoes. And now we're adding nutritional supplements as well every day. It's expanding what it's doing for the kids. They're learning songs and Bible verses and just all the things about the gospel, and it's a kind of a side thing within the school beyond what they do at the school. Every year when our team goes to Zimbabwe, we will meet with children that we happen to sponsor. Many of us sponsor kids who you already know what I'm talking about, many of you. And so we'll get to meet our kids, and it's really kind of a cool thing. And something happened, I think I did tell you a few months ago, but if you weren't here, this is a cool story, I think. In 2017, we met little Gracie here. This is the Weller support her, sponsor her. And that year, Danielle couldn't go, and so Shannon and I were there, and we brought some gifts from her. And so we just met her, and she was just scared, like, who are these white people? Why are they coming to my school? This is like rural Zimbabwe, and what are they doing? Why are they taking pictures of me? So she has this look of like, who are you people? You're not taking me away, are you? I don't know what she was thinking. She was kind of scared. Well, then a few years go by. She's in the Living Proof because of the sponsorship. She's getting the gospel. She's hearing things. And then this past summer, our team went there to that school. We don't always do like preaching there, but this time we had a revival at that school on a Wednesday night. We did VBS and stuff during the day. Then at night, we did a revival. We did some preaching. Had a little invitation, and she was one of the people who stood up and said she wanted to accept Christ and to become a follower here of him. And how cool that is to think that was a direct impact of people at Pathway who have sponsored this child, and then Pathway goes back, and we preach the gospel, and she exciting to see that. So that other picture was her the next day, and they had sent gifts along. I was able to give her some gifts, so she's grown and matured and everything as a person. Pretty cool. So in addition to last summer, while I was on that, we did 3 revivals in 3 different areas. We did vacation Bible schools at each place. There were like 35 people who made decisions for Christ through the preaching and teaching that we did there last summer, which is just amazing to think. We're just really doing that for 2 weekends and the week in between, right? They had across the mission was it 984, something like that, the people who were baptized last year. The goal was 1,000. They were just shy of it. So they're doing it again this year. They're making that an emphasis again. They're doing revivals all over the place. We're going again in July. We got 2 or 3 more revivals planned. That's still kind of up in the air, locations and stuff. And it's just cool to see what God is doing in Africa. Honestly, that's what got me jumping on board. I saw what God was doing, and it's like we got to be a part of that. We got to partner with Him in that. Well, in addition to the schools and the churches at the schools, the mission has also started multiple churches beyond where there isn't a school. They just go out and start churches. We started one of them a few years ago. Our team went and started in a community called Chiredzi, and it's been thriving. We've done 3 revivals there, and every time we do that, people come and they pile on, and it just the church grows and it impacts them. And then I just heard in the last couple of months that I didn't even know this until then that church has thrived enough that it went off and started a second church. So it's spreading. What God is doing is just reaching out and reaching people, and people are changing, and it's spreading all across Zimbabwe. It's so cool. We just recently established there was a college there that was like a 2-year college, and kind of almost a trade school type feel. And we just took that thing over in the last few months, called it Central Christian College, Central African Christian College. And now it's a 4-year accredited college where students can come, and we're going to have two tracks. That's it. Preaching and teaching, right? We're not going to have all the extra stuff. It's like you're coming here for ministry, right? And that thing is already starting to thrive. We got all kinds of new people coming in, and it's pretty exciting. What has happened is it's a shift in thinking. Zimbabwe has been the mission field, right? And for us it is. We go to Zimbabwe. But what about the people in Zimbabwe who are there? We go there for a couple weeks and we come back. The people in Zimbabwe, we're now teaching them that now you are the missionaries, and they are going to reach out into the rest of Africa. The goal is to reach the entire continent through the ministry of what's happening here in little Zimbabwe. And in this college, we already have students from other countries in Africa coming in that have enrolled for next year. And we just want to reach the thousands. What's happening is the Muslims are coming in from the north, and they have oil money, and they're building mosques, and they're trying to expand, but they're not really getting traction, really. At the same time, the Christianity is kind of pushing north, and so we're going to do as much as we can to just thrive, just spread the gospel as much as possible, and help make sure people make it to heaven. I've been hearing for years, I started reading, 15 years ago probably, that things were just starting to really happen in Africa, that God's really moving there. It seems like you look through church history, the church kind of thrives in a particular area, then it kind of moves around like where the center of Christianity is, where all the theologians are coming from, all the good writing, all the good preachers are coming from. Started in Jerusalem and went to Antioch, Egypt area at some point. You go years and years down the line, it was Europe. It wasn't that long ago. That's where all the theologians were coming from. And then the U.S., we became a big influence in the world with Christianity. But honestly, as the church has moved away from the Scripture, the Spirit of God and His working is moving right now to Africa. That's becoming like the center of the world of Christianity. Current research tells us that by the year 2060, this is a guess, but Barna research says that some 40% of all Christians will be in Africa. That'll be like the center of Christianity in the world. And we want to be at the front end and the cutting edge of that evangelism, making sure that the kingdom of God is growing and people are getting saved and they can make it to heaven and have eternal life. And the college is a key area in making that happen with sending out workers into the harvest field. We have a preachers conference every year that just happened a few weeks ago. Al Serhal was there and doing that, and they bring in from all over. We had some from other countries in Africa that came down for it as well. It's a great encouragement. It's a great equipping time for them, and they go out back enthused, and the churches thrive. In January 2023, we opened the new Living Proof High School. So we had all these Living Proof clubs all over the place. And they get to a point where it costs money to go to high school there. The public education is different than it is here. You can go to a certain point, then you have to start paying money. Well, these poor families can't afford it. That's part of the sponsorship, goes to make sure we can educate them into high school and beyond, potentially. But we've gone a step further, and now we're going to take the cream of the crop from the Living Proof 1,500 or so children that are part of that clubs and invite them to come to this Living Proof high school that is in Pemberton Station is called. This is the place, this is the first weekend we're going to spend there if you're on the Zimbabwe team. An absolute gorgeous facility. It's brand new. We just opened the thing up. Just the high school opened in January. And it's going to be it is a boarding school. It's a regular school. They're going to add like another grade every year, so it's going to just keep growing. And they're going to be given a great education. They're going to hear the gospel of Christ, and it's going to be one of the premier schools in all of Zimbabwe. I think I probably showed this video here, but I'll show it again because I was there in the last few days of November, first few days of December, and took some drone footage of this school. It was still in building, so it was like it was in a rush to get this thing done. They got it done. Here's a little video of this new school that we got going, Pemberton Station. It's in a little area of Zimbabwe called Gutu, and Pemberton, named after the founding missionaries, of course. We take a team from Pathway every year, God willing. So far, it's been pretty good, except for COVID years. But and everyone's welcome to come. You can come with us next year. Then you start planning for that now. I mentioned we planted the church there 3 years ago. It's grown rapidly. It has already planted a new one. There's a church that meets at this school already. It's already growing, and I preached there when I was there in the end of the year, and another person accepted Christ. I mean, it's just amazing how God is spreading through the area. I was talking to the preacher afterwards, and you can see all the land there. You look at it and think, where are the people? I don't know where the people come from, but thousands are out there. And he's already pointing to different little places, saying, we want to plant a church there, we want to plant a church there, we want to plant a church over there. And he's very big vision of what he wants to do, what he believes God wants him to do. I don't want to say what he wants to do. It's nothing for his glory. They'll send out and they'll just start churches, and they'll be popping up all over. This is the housing area where the staff will live. The preacher lives there as well. This summer, I'm hosting the first. I've spent some time with the Bible College president driving around this past November, December, and as we were talking, there's an extreme need to help elders there. Like they have elders, but they just like people, hey, you're an elder, and nobody knows what that means. You know, they've not been trained. Most of them don't even have Bibles, and they're like called to oversee the church. And he was like, we really need to do something to help them. So we're going to have the first elders conference this July. That we'd like it to be an annual thing to start training. So we're going to make sure they all have Bibles. We're going to do what we can to equip them, give them some good tools to start elding in the church, because you need the strong balance in every church to be healthy. You need the congregation doing their thing, and the preacher doing his thing, and the elders doing their thing, and all that working together is how God designs the church to work. And if parts are missing or weak, that's going to be a struggle for any church. So all these little churches in Africa are struggling because you got to say, well, part of the problem is a preacher shows up and says, I'm an apostle, you have to do what I say. And they're like, and so he's embezzling funds and being immoral and doing all kinds of things that any eldership would look at and say, you can't do that. Well, the elders don't think they have the authority to tell, well, he said he's an apostle. It's like, just because he says an apostle doesn't mean he's an apostle, you know? And so we're going to do some training on how to get control to make sure that the preachers aren't destroying churches. And then that's that whole thing. But so I'm excited about that. It's going to add some depth, I think, to what's going on there. I love, here's the deal. I love working with the churches. That's what started the whole thing. I love going and preaching at the churches. I love mingling with the staff and the Hippo Valley and the outreach and brainstorm and talk about the Bible College president, all the stuff that's been going on there. But that's not my new role. I mean, I'm still be doing all of that. But as far as my role at the mission is with the orphanage, which is interesting because we've always gone to the orphanage, right? Every time we'll visit, we'll host a little party, and we'll have some food and get to meet the kids. But I always leave thinking, well, everybody else is taking care of the orphans because that's how can you not take care of the orphans, right? And I found out that nobody really is. Nobody's championing the Orphans right now. And so they asked me, well, would you want to do that? I said, well, there's a long story to that of prayer and me reaching out saying, how can I pray for you and what needs do you have? And they started saying, well, we need people to champion the orphans. That's my job. That's not my, what is it, director of development for the orphanage. It's a volunteer thing, so it's not like I have this big job, but it is a big job. For sure. If you haven't been to the orphanage, I took a little drone tour there. This is like my third time ever with a drone, right? So I bought it like 2 days before I left for Africa, thinking I need some drone footage. So I'm not professional by any means, but this is a little, to the right there is a little chapel area. There's also a church that meets there on Sunday. You got the cool playground equipment. Of course, the kids having a little fun, the ones that were back from school. A little playground. What's that? Oh. The little housing areas, they meet as families. They live as families, and they have like a mom there, and they learn how to be brothers and sisters, and how to plant crops and take care of themselves. They do a lot to try to prepare them for adulthood in Zimbabwe, and that's what these little homes are. I don't always recognize it from the air when I'm looking at it, but that's still those homes. Cool stuff going on there. They began the orphan ministry in 2000 when HIV was really rampant going through the sub-Saharan area there, the African area in that place. It was killing a lot of people. There were a lot of, the average life expectancy was down to 47. Children were literally living in the streets because their parents were gone, or maybe dad had passed away, and mom didn't work and couldn't afford to feed the 5 kids, so you get rid of 2 or 3 of them, and the kids just roaming, homeless. And so the mission opened up in Chiredzi, called Chiredzi Christian Children's Village. They've raised well over 100 kids in the past few years. They've grown up in the orphanage. They've gone on to get married. They've gone on to have children of their own, be productive citizens. There's a few of them I know that as adults. Tanesh, I may be saying their names wrong. He was found some 20 years ago. A young boy wandering the streets. Nobody knew who his parents were. No one could figure out anything. So he was raised most of his life in the orphanage. Desperately in need of roof, food, protection, the whole thing. So the village took him in, they raised him in the Christian environment. He went on to university, got an education degree, got married, started his own family. He went down to South Africa, began working as a teacher. Then he moved back, and he is one of the teachers in our new Living Proof High School that we just opened in January. This was him last summer. He was just doing tutoring at the orphanage. So he grew up there. Now he's helping his brothers learn education and improve their education. Pretty cool story with him. Great success story. Upenyu, some of you actually know him. He's coming here in the summer. He also grew up in the orphanage. We met him there in Zimbabwe when he was working with Hippo Valley. Here's a picture of him in Zimbabwe baptizing a young man. It was kind of cool to be able to be a witness of that, to go to the church where he was working and preaching at and see that. He went to their little 2-year Bible college they had that we converted to a 4-year, became a preacher, but still it's not quite equipped like the preachers in the States. So he came to the States, Kentucky Christian College, and he's there right now and working on his degree. Then he's going to get a master's degree. He plans to go back and be teaching Greek in the Bible college that we have. He'll be here this summer working with the kids. He's working with kids now at a church in Grace, and he's very excited to come back. I hope you are too. It's going to be really fun. That was him preaching here one day, and it might have been his last day. He came during COVID, right? 2020. It was like, oh, that was a weird time. And then had him on the radio thing, doing a thing that was kind of cool. So you'll get to know him, and you're going to love him, and it's great. But it's a great success story of someone who was just dropped off as a baby at the orphanage, and they don't know his dad, they don't know his mom, and he just grew up his whole life in the orphanage, and now he's serving Jesus, doing kingdom stuff, preparing the next generation for kingdom stuff. God working in people through the orphanage who has helped a child grow up to be a follower. Next guy is I'm not sure how his name is pronounced, Nikola. I think I've listened to him say it 100 times, and I just don't quite catch it. Nikola, I don't know his story either. I don't know how he got there. But he's been there every time we've been there in the past. So there's some pictures of him through the years. He's a musician, loves music, loves leading worship. When we did revivals last year, he was doing the worship leading, playing and involved with that whole thing. There's Danielle teaching him some guitar chords one day. He's a keyboard guy himself, so they were just talking, and yeah, that's up there, one of the revivals in the upper right-hand corner. And this picture I took, he was at the Pemberton Station, the Living Proof High School, in December because he grew up, he got his education, and now he's a plumber, and he's officially a plumber at the school, and it was kind of cool to have lunch with him and have conversation and to see another success story of someone who would have just been homeless, who would have probably died at a young age, become a drug addict, is often what happens, and they were able to pull him out and give him a good life. There's just tons of stories like that of kids who had everything in the world going against them, who was destined to grow up in the streets, but grew up in the orphanage instead, became Christians, and now involved in kingdom work. I'll bet you he'll be with us with revivals this summer again too, and he's just a great personality, big old smile. Did I get him on a smile there? No, I guess not. That was just a little clip from one of the videos I took. I was going to show it, but he's got enough accent. It's hard to understand. Thing is that the more of these kids I've met, whether they're adults now or the children that are there, it's just impacts your life. You know, like I said, I always figured, oh, people are taking care of them. They get all this stuff. We need to go out into the rural churches. They need help. The orphans don't need help. And as I learned in this past year, actually, they do need a lot of help because no one's there. There's no one there that's their champion. They had someone before, and that person's not there. They're just, physically not around anymore to be able to help them. And then the more certain Bible verses started sticking out to me, where in the past I could just kind of fly over them. You know, those verses you go, yeah, people need to do that, and you go on. I started reading these verses going, I know these kids now. I can't just say, oh yeah, there's somebody out there that needs help. Like Psalm 68:5. God in his holy dwelling is a father of the fatherless, a champion of widows. God provides homes for those who are deserted. Now, I used to read that verse, and that was my verse growing up. My dad was distant and ran off and all this stuff, and I thought, yeah, Dad, God's my dad. He's a father to the fatherless. And it's true. He was very influential in my life, the Father, God. But this is like a whole different level. They literally don't have one. They literally don't know who it was. They literally would be on their own if they didn't have someone who would pull them in. And I have now seen the homes. It says that he is holy dwelling as a father to the fatherless, a champion of widows, provides homes for those who are deserted. I've been in their home that God has provided. I've walked through their homes. We've helped equip some of their homes. I've had the tour. And it's so awe-inspiring to walk through these homes and say, this is provided by God's people, by God, for these orphans. He has provided a home for the orphans, the fatherless. James 1:27 says, pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and keep oneself unstained from the world. I don't know how you have processed that through the years. That's not a new verse. You've heard that before. But I have processed it myself thinking, I don't know any orphans. Right? I know plenty of people who've been adopted in different situations and things like that. But I don't know truly orphans who have no home. Never known any. The widows I've known in the past are not out in the streets begging like it would have been at this time of the writing. They literally had no help. So I just kind of passed over that verse. Like, yeah, those people, I'm glad God helped them way back then at the time. And at the time this verse was written, it was orphans and widows were the two most vulnerable people on the planet. They had no income. They had no way to make income. They literally, like I said, were just simply beggars, and they had nothing to give back if you helped. It's not like I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's like they have nothing to offer, zero. And James says to this group, that is pure and undefiled religion, to care after them. That started working on me this summer after we came back, more than it ever had before. And then you put these verses through the lens and the filter of Matthew 25, where Jesus tells the story of he separated the sheep from the goats, and some go to heaven and some don't. And it's based, the separation is based on how they treated the people of need. And we've talked about that plenty of times. And you put the orphan verses through that filter, at least for me, it just wrecked me. It's like, how can I just go through a party for them and eat meal with them and then leave and say, oh, well, I did my thing for the year. Glad we got that one meal. Good for me, pat myself on the back. But Jesus commends the people in the story, the sheep and the goats, who helped him, who reached out to him, and they're like going, well, wait a minute, I don't remember helping you. He said, oh, you fed me when I was hungry. You clothed me when I was naked. You visited me when I was in prison. Like, no. I don't know what you're talking about. They asked that in verse 37 in Matthew 25. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or clothes and clothe you, without clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? The king will answer them, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. See, now when I read verses like this, I can actually have images of real people go through my mind. I've eaten meals with people that we provided meals for who wouldn't have had a meal. I've played games with them. I've done silly little picture of the favorite thing. You pull out the phone and they're ready. They just get around you and then start taking pictures. I've held little babies, orphan babies who wouldn't have a home if there wasn't an orphanage for them to live in. And that just, man, it just hit me so hard this year for some reason. I say God, the Spirit stirring in me, and I woke up many times in the middle of the night after July, praying for specific children, praying for the staff, praying for the workers, praying for the whole orphan ministry, and just Lord, how can we really serve them? And then I kind of reached out and said, hey, give me 3 things to pray for. I said, give me 3 goals and 3 dreams, and I'm going to pray for those. And I started doing that every day with the staff there. I talked to the directors there. And then one thing led to another, and here I am talking about orphans. I've traveled around telling the stories of some of these kids, and I'm still learning. I'm still like, this is brand new. I'm still figuring this thing out. Talking about the great work. It's easy to talk about the great things God's doing through Hippo Valley Christian Mission. I'm learning more specifically how they're truly impacting people in the orphanage. You'll see firsthand here in a few weeks when Opinu shows up, and you'll see that this guy grew up. He would have been completely, probably wouldn't be alive right now, to be honest, but is because an orphanage exists. I read it somewhere that 95% of evangelistic efforts comes from the United States. That we're the ones who are funding the whole missionary outreach globally, right? I mean, Zimbabwe doesn't have money to send. They don't have hardly money to eat, right? But that's going to change as we do things they'll send into their own country. But 95% of funding of evangelistic effort comes here from the States, mostly from thousands of churches like ours. You think, oh yeah, let the mega churches take care of that. They do their stuff, but it's mostly, there's way more churches like ours than there are mega churches. I mean, thousands more. And it's individuals like us, people like us who are just doing our little part, little here, little there, that start to add up and that's why a place like Africa is being evangelized, and God is moving so greatly because it's funding things that are happening there. Now, I'm not here to really ask for money, because we do that. There's plenty of opportunities. So don't. I want to tell you what sponsorships are available, because some of you are going to want to know. So I'll let you know, and that's what I tell the churches when I go out to them. But please don't feel like I'm trying to pressure or guilt you. That's not the goal of this. But if you're like, man, I want to do something, I want to tell you the 3 sponsorship levels that I developed here in the last couple months, 3 months, whatever, that we're promoting across our fine country right now. The first is virtual adoption, and this honestly, this one isn't for everybody. I mean, I wish it was, but it's most people can't afford it. This is the biggest one that we have. It's for maybe churches that want to make that part of their mission giving. It's for maybe 2 or 3 families who cluster together and say, yeah, we'll all do X amount, and we'll do this, or small groups. I have a Sunday school class in Missouri that's trying to figure out how they can do that as a Sunday school class, because they could actually take their Sunday school class hour once a month and take 10 minutes and have a video call to their child. Because what happens is because it's $250 a month, right? So it's a significant commitment. It covers all their costs, though, all their food, all the medical, the doctors, the counseling. Some of these kids come just wrecked, right? And they've been abused so badly. Some can't even speak, and they're pulling them back to life, And so this covers all of that stuff: clothing, food, the whole thing. And with it being such a big commitment, we made some perks that went with it, with this sponsorship. You get to choose which child you actually sponsor. I think I have a little, actually the notebook's back there by that big window there, with little pictures, little bios about them. And you get to choose. Secondly, you get to have a monthly video call, and that's the thing I'm really excited about. When I was there, November, December, this is the very first video call that has happened. You get a monthly video call. Megan is on staff there, and she'll help facilitate the conversation, so it's not an awkward, hello, 4-year-old Shona speaking child, she'll help. They do learn English, but they'll get to you just have to learn their cadence and their British accents with their English language. It's something to get through. She'll help with that and keep the conversation going and help you out. So that's kind of a cool thing. Matter of fact, did I say that? This is the very first one ever that we had, which is really cool to be. I just happened to get to be there because we were trying to figure out how we're going to some of the logistics, how we're going to make this thing happen. And so that's a big thing with it there. So especially if you have a long-term support, you can actually watch them grow up and communicate with them, and what a cool thing. Learn their culture, they can learn your life, and so that's a big perk of the virtual adoption. It does cost a lot. So part of it also just the logistics of if we had everybody doing smaller sponsorships trying to do that, there's no way the staff could work. They'd be doing that all day. So this limits it. The second level, honestly, is probably for most people. This is the village partner, because any one given time, there's 25 to 30 kids that are there that are just temporary. Maybe they've been badly abused. Maybe they were found roaming and nobody can find their parents, and they're digging to see where they live and trying to find relatives. And so maybe they'll be there for 2 or 3 months or 2 or 3 years. I mean, nobody really knows. It's just unknown. Sometimes they're waiting for court system to do its job. They've been taken out of a home because they were badly abused in every way you can imagine. And there's that child. And the court's figuring out, well, they can go to uncle, somebody else's house, and so though they're for the temporary for that time. There's a part of the cultures they have marriage and divorce there, and with divorce, what often happens if you have children and now there's a divorce and you have a blended family. In America, we struggle through it and try to make this work and figure it out. In Africa, they're like, I can't feed you all, so they will torture kids. Sometimes they'll just kick them out and say you're done when the new dad comes in. And those kids get abused so aggressively that this is the place for them to go. So like I say, it could be a temporary thing, but it might be a long-term. The village partner covered. They still have to eat. They still have to go to medical appointments. They have to, transportation. They have to do all this stuff, clothing, room and board, all that stuff. So this covers that for a generic number of kids. And honestly, we need an army of people who will be village partners, because it also will cover the general fund things that you don't expect or that you know is going to happen. We're raising money for a truck right now because their 2001 vehicle died. I'll tell you about that. There was no money set aside because, well, there wasn't. They'd use it all. So the idea of the village partnership is to be able to pay for things like that and then save up for equipment, for breaking things and vehicles and just stuff. So it's building a cushion. That's what that is all about. And we need a ton of people to do that so we can take care of the kids. $25 a month, did I say that is what that is? So it's a smaller amount. Cheryl and I just became one last week, because one of our living proof children aged out, and they're like, well, do you want a new living proof child, or what do you want to do? And I said, how about if we just transfer that over to the orphanage? So now we have a boy that we sponsor with living proof, and then we also do the village partner at $25 a month. I'll figure out someday when I can do more than that, but that's where we're at, village partner. The third one also is brand new. All this is kind of new, but this is like the restructuring. The third one is called First Five. This is the taking care of the kids the first 5 years after they're 18. Because they hit 18 and the state's like, you're out. You can't be in an orphanage anymore. They still have rules, we can't just say, no, we're going to keep them. So they're out. Well, now what? They don't have a home, they don't have parents, they don't have a job, they don't have school, they're homeless, right? So for the first 5 years, it's trying to help them get their footing. Now, when our kids in the States get out of school, out of high school, and maybe they're going on to college, or maybe they're doing something, we generally help them a little bit, right? Maybe you go shopping with them, get them things like a bed, a pillow, a blanket, whatever. Just the basics. They don't have any of that. They don't have any of that. They don't have an apartment. They don't have a down payment. They don't have a cosigner. They have nothing at all. And so this is money that we'll start collecting for these kids who will be able, the people there in Zimbabwe can manage this and help them maybe with scholarships for college, maybe with, you need a laptop? We can help you with that. You need a blanket? Oh, sure, we'll help you. That type of thing. They'll provide tools. Maybe they don't want to go to college, but they go to a trade. I want to be a plumber. I want to be whatever, electrician. We got to have tools, right? Well, mom and dad's not there to buy them tools, so we'll be able to help provide things like that. That's what this fund is all about. Here's what happens way too often in Zimbabwe, especially to orphans, but it happens to other kids too, but especially orphans. If you're a girl and you grow up, you become a woman, now you're out on your own, what are you going to do? Well, you try to find a wealthy man who will marry you and take care of you. And of course, they have this idea, they're going to take care of me. Well, they just get abused for a few years and then thrown out until they can find another one. And now what? Now they've gone down, and now they're in a place, they're stuck. So what often happens is they use the only marketable skills they have. They have no real formal education. They don't know how to do stuff. So they get into prostitution. And that's how they make their living, which then leads to all kinds of other problems as well. Without that help, they get stuck there. The young men enroll in school of some kind, and maybe if for whatever reason they don't get started on a solid footing. I tell you what, my first semester of college, I didn't do like some stuff you might think of. I was just like, and I wasn't ready for that. I needed to mature a little bit. What will happen is they go and then they'll fail, or they'll start spiraling down, and then they start doing the alcohol and the drugs. They become addicts. They end up on the street, and their lives are just spiral down after that. This scholarship helps both the males and the females, both these, get on their feet for the first 5 years so they can have an advantage rather than a disadvantage that they currently have because they're already down a rung because they're orphans. But to give them an advantage, like, you already have the education. Well, we might listen to you, and you may have the tools. That's great. So it's to help them lead a productive life. Like I said, these are all brand new. You're the second people to hear these, so that's how new they are. And I don't expect you to remember anything, but I do have pamphlets back there. If you're like, wait, what was that on that little table back there? There's little pamphlets. You can read about it and know about it. It's on our Facebook page as well, which I'll show you here in a second. We also, here, I got a special gift for you today, a calendar that's already got 3 months gone on it, 2 months gone on it. Back in there, you take a calendar on the way out. Those calendars are, in the back there's pictures of some of the actual kids in the orphanage, but then like the full-blown, they're cartoon caricatures of our kids from the orphanage, kind of inspired by the photos. It's kind of fun. And they don't do any good just sitting in a box. Here we're in March, so I want to make sure if you want a calendar, grab one. That would be really awesome. Two big things have happened in recent months. Things that going forward, the Village Partners funds would take care of. But since we've never had that yet, I'm starting with zero. I'm starting with a negative like $40,000. No, more than that. So here, Dan, save the orphans. What? I'm starting in the hole. But two big things have happened in the past few months. Our 2001 van broke down, and they repaired it as many times as they could, and then finally the mechanic said, well, we can repair it, but it's going to just buy a car, really, honestly. You've probably been there with vehicles of your own. I know I have. And so that is gone. It's gone. And their goal is to get a truck, which would be around $50,000 there. Lots of hoops to jump through and everything. But that will not only be transportation. Right now, there's zero transportation for the kids. They're just there. So I'm assuming that the workers are using their vehicles to take them to doctor's appointments, court appointments, different things, whatever they got going on, and to bring supplies. So they want a truck to be for transportation and also to bring supplies to and from the orphanage. It's going to cost $50,000. I think we got about $11,000 raised right now. We just started the thing it's probably been months ago now. I'm going to say weeks, but a little while ago. Secondly, on Friday, just a couple days ago, there was a fire at the orphanage. It burned down one of the buildings. The building that housed the preschool. It also housed all their supplies and all their food, which is great. And this happened Friday. Some of you have been in this building. We have pictures of some of you in this building, and now it's gone. Now we're working with a national organization that's going to maybe help. Sounds like they're going to help rebuild the building, but this not all the way. And supplies and all that stuff. We're going to, we're still making a long-term plan for what that looks like, but we're working on replacing that. So here's I got 2 action steps for you. Check out the Hippo Valley website, which hippovalley.org. And if you want to help support some of that, great. If not, I'll never know. I mean, it's not. Don't worry about me. If something like you feel like God's saying, man, I really need to help these guys, get on their website and donate to it. And there's a place that I'll and tell them where you want the gift to go, the school, or the orphanage, or the truck, or whatever the fire, or the truck, or something like that. We're still working out the website details because it needs to be redesigned now that we have all this new sponsorship levels. But if you want to sponsor one of the children at one of the levels, it's on there too. Just go to the donate and then the one-time gift, and then from there you just write in the note. That's how I signed up for my kid. So it could be confusing, and I know what's going on because I designed the thing, the program, but I haven't designed the website. So just write a note, and they'll know what to do if you want to do something. Second action step is just follow us on Facebook. It's free. We have 99 likes as of yesterday, so hopefully after today we'll have maybe another like. It just helps you keep up with what's happening, and you'll get as time goes on, we'll get stories of the kids and stuff like that, and some fun things, little videos from the place, and I took a bunch of video when I was there in November, and I've been just clipping it up into little pieces and throwing it out there just for people to know. So that's what's going on. Like I say, I'm not here to beg you for money. We have enough opportunities to give, but if I'm not going to say no for you. If God's touching on your heart to do something, that's a way you can literally care for orphans in the name of God, not in a generic sense. So I'll leave it up to you. Well, let's pray.